Hola, buenos días. ¿Qué tal? Yo soy Gonzalo Sánchez. Sean bienvenidos a este conversatorio que tenemos hoy patrocinado por Citibanamex en esta edición de FINNOSUMMIT Webinar. Bueno, el título de la sesión es Banca y Fintech, una colaboración inteligente. Y justo antes de comenzar, queremos dar un agradecimiento a nuestro patrocinador Citibanamex, ya que sin su apoyo no sería posible dar visibilidad a este tipo de colaboraciones que están ocurriendo en el corazón del ecosistema fintech de América Latina. Asimismo, si están interesados en conectar con Finovista o con el equipo de Citibanamex, además de cualquiera de los participantes de esta sesión, de nuestros speakers principales, no duden en visitar los booths o mesas virtuales que están en la plataforma de Remo. Remo es esta plataforma que utilizamos para las transmisiones en vivo de FINNOSUMMIT Webinar y de todos los eventos digitales de Finovista. Si pueden ver, la plataforma es como una especie de videojuego, es un campo donde hay muchas mesas y tú puedes ir saltando entre las diferentes mesas para conocer y conectar con las personas que están sentadas en esa mesa. Durante el contenido principal, únicamente puedes conversar con estas personas a través del chat de la plataforma, pero una vez que termine el contenido principal, podrás unirte en una videollamada con estas personas. Entonces, habilitamos este espacio para la comunidad fintech de América Latina y para nosotros es muy importante que crezcan su networking, que conecten con otros actores del ecosistema y, pues bueno, sean bienvenidos a esta fiesta fintech, ¿no? Ya son las 11 de la mañana. Este evento será transmitido en vivo en todas las plataformas de la comunidad fintech latinoamericana y justo queremos también invitarlos a que nos acompañen en nuestras redes sociales, donde estaremos compartiendo los momentos más importantes de la transmisión. Nos pueden encontrar como @finovista, ahí lo pueden ver en pantalla. Y pues bueno, antes de comenzar esta edición en la cual conoceremos la mirada de especialistas del sector sobre el Open Banking y el Open Finance y cómo están impactando los servicios financieros de América Latina y cómo benefician evidentemente a la población, pues bueno, queremos dar una pequeña introducción, que justamente Open Banking es un modelo que facilita el intercambio de datos y servicios entre todo tipo de instituciones financieras a través de interfaces de programación de aplicaciones, es decir, las famosas APIs o APIs. Recordemos que históricamente las regulaciones financieras establecían que toda la información financiera debía quedar almacenada de forma exclusiva por la entidad financiera con la cual los clientes contrataban productos o servicios, y esta institución era la propietaria de esa información. Sin embargo, ahora estamos viendo un movimiento con la introducción del concepto de Open Banking, donde los usuarios de los servicios financieros son ahora los dueños de sus propios datos e información financiera y pueden compartirlos libremente con quienes ellos tengan, con quien ellos quieran a través de las famosas APIs. Entonces, para acceder, esto lo van a hacer para acceder a servicios financieros más rápidos, eficientes y que se ajusten a sus necesidades específicas. Todo esto constituye realmente un cambio de paradigma y podría decirse que estamos empezando una nueva era gracias al Open Banking y al Open Finance. Y es que este movimiento justo ha dado origen a un montón de nuevos modelos de negocio y nuevos tipos de servicios financieros, como por ejemplo modelos de crédito innovadores que se adaptan a las necesidades de los usuarios, dan pie a la automatización de la gestión financiera de personas y también de empresas, y también incluso hay algunos casos de uso para pagos y también para portabilidad de datos. Entonces, solamente diferenciando un poco el concepto de Open Banking con el de Open Finance, justamente el movimiento de Open Banking se ha extendido y ha surgido este concepto de Open Finance, que digamos que es el siguiente paso del Open Banking. Se trata de un modelo de intercambio de datos donde las fuentes de información provienen no solamente de las instituciones financieras y de los bancos, sino que también pueden venir a través de otras fuentes no bancarias, por ejemplo, organizaciones estatales, cadenas de retail, telecomunicaciones, y también últimamente hay varios casos de uso para plataformas de las economías colaborativas. Pero bueno, creo que no soy la persona más indicada para profundizar sobre estas temáticas y hoy tenemos unos speakers de primer nivel que nos van a acompañar. Entonces vamos a continuar, pero antes quiero invitarlos a calentar motores a través de nuestra primera dinámica de hoy. Como saben, en todos los eventos digitales de Finovista, invitamos a la audiencia a participar activamente a través de SparkUp. SparkUp es una plataforma con la cual van a poder interactuar con nosotros a través de la siguiente dinámica, y también al final de la sesión van a poder lanzar preguntas a los speakers de la sesión. Pueden acceder a SparkUp a través del código que aparece en pantalla, escaneándolo con su teléfono móvil, o a través de la liga que aparece, finovista.sparkup.live. Y una vez que accedan a la plataforma, les va a pedir un código para unirse a nuestro evento, que es justamente FINO, ahí con FINO con doble N. Y pues bueno, vamos a dar un minuto para que me acompañen a SparkUp. Yo también me tengo que registrar. Y pues bueno, ahí en breve les compartiremos la pantalla. Creo que justamente ha sido una maravilla desde el que empezó el confinamiento derivado de la pandemia. Hay un montón de oferta de webinars y contenidos digitales, pero creo que son pocos los que realmente involucran a la audiencia. Creo que eso es algo padre que ha hecho FINNOSUMMIT con los eventos. Y bueno, ya inició la pregunta, les aparece en pantalla en SparkUp, y la pregunta es: ¿qué casos de uso puede tener el Open Finance en la banca? Vemos ahí el tema de pagos, que lo estábamos platicando. ¿Qué más hay? Veo por ahí onboarding. El tema de onboarding creo que es muy importante. Justamente las conexiones a través de APIs permiten que cada vez sean menos las entradas manuales que los usuarios tienen que hacer para contratar o solicitar servicios financieros. Veo por ahí personalización. Sí, justo los consumidores van a poder elegir servicios que se adecúen mejor a sus necesidades. Vemos por ahí remesas también. El tema de iniciación de pagos va a ser muy importante. ¿Qué más vemos? Veo por ahí mejores pymes, que es, bueno, ahí son dos palabras, pero las pymes van a poder tener acceso a créditos de manera más sencilla y rápida a través de Open Banking. Vemos colaboración, justamente creo que esa es la esencia del Open Banking, tener a diferentes actores del ecosistema financiero trabajando en conjunto. Apertura de datos, marketplace, ¿qué más dice? Seguridad, claro. ¿Qué más vemos por ahí? Veo por ahí cross-selling, que justo pues esta parte del Open Banking va a habilitar que las instituciones puedan ofrecer nuevos productos financieros a sus usuarios, e inclusive pues, vamos a poder ver casos de upselling, ¿no? De donde le venden productos mejores o más sofisticados. Vemos innovación, claro, también está, creo que es parte del ADN del Open Banking. Regulación, experiencia de usuario. Hablábamos ya de cómo el Open Banking permite la automatización de las finanzas personales y las finanzas empresariales. El KYC. Oigan, hay mucha participación, me da mucho gusto. Creo que ahora sí se animaron a participar. Y pues bueno, ahora que ya aprendieron a utilizar la herramienta, pues vamos a arrancar con el contenido principal. Muchas gracias a quienes se animaron a participar en la dinámica. Y bueno, el objetivo justo era destacar cuáles son los casos que nuestra comunidad fintech de América Latina visualiza para el Open Banking y Open Finance en la región. Pues bueno, justo antes de continuar con el contenido principal de esta edición, vamos a ver un video de nuestro patrocinador Citibanamex, y cuando regresemos cambiaremos de idioma, el idioma de la sesión. Vamos a continuar la conversación en inglés, ¿vale? Pues vamos con el anuncio de nuestro patrocinador.
Descubre la nueva Mi Cuenta Citibanamex y disfruta de beneficios como 2x1 en el cine, preventas top. Además, maneja todo desde tu app Citibanamex móvil. Nueva Mi Cuenta Citibanamex, una nueva relación con tu dinero.
Salo, te escuchamos.
So we are running the next part of the session in English. So let's start with the main content of this FINNOSUMMIT webinar. It's a pleasure to welcome the speakers: Pablo Viguera, co-founder and CEO of Belbo; Patricia Souza, digital platforms and commercial cards product head at Citi; Kevin Weber, senior vice president of venture investing at Citi Ventures. And to guide this conversation, Gabriel Maldonado, managing director of digital sales at Citibanamex. Gabriel, the floor is yours. Please welcome.
Thank you very much, Salo. We are really excited to have these three tracks in this webinar. As you know, this type of summits, webinar for Citibanamex are really important because we are trying to maintain the same pace as fintechs and the market. So let's start a little bit with the word open banking sometimes could be a little bit scary for some people. But in each country, it's a little bit different. So if we can start with you, Kevin, can you tell us, and what US is a little bit ahead of everybody now in this topic. Can you tell us what is open banking now in the US in the type of also regulation and market?
Absolutely. And thanks again, everybody, for having me here today. As mentioned in the intro, my name is again Kevin Weber, and I'm with Citi Ventures, based out of our New York office. And Citi Ventures is one of the venture investing arms of Citi. Just a little bit of background on us to set the context. We're a stage agnostic investor. We're investing across both tech and enterprise software, typically investing check sizes of anywhere from 2 to 20 million USD. The team's global. We've got roughly 100 portfolio companies, a number of them in the LATAM region. And excited today to join one of our newest portfolio companies, Belvo, of which we closed an investment in earlier this year. But coming back to open banking, open finance, and sort of the US, Citi and Citi Ventures, really engaged early in the open banking framework. Citi, dating back to 2016, had a number of offerings and sandboxes open to developers. Citi Ventures made some early investments in Plaid here in the US, as well as subsequently an investment in Koya, with a similar model led by a consortium of US banks, really working to drive open banking and trying to set a number of regulations and standards here in the US. And so, while the US may be a few years ahead, the piece I think is key to distinguishing the US market is a lot of open banking initiatives first were driven by consumer demand and some of the fintechs, and just the ease and customer experience that banks, FIs, fintechs, other partners, etc., were hoping to drive. And it really wasn't until the past year, maybe year and a half, where we started to see a little bit more regulation coming into play and trying to drive the framework. And the CFPB here again in the US getting involved. And so I think the short answer to the question is open banking and open finance has evolved over the years. And now we're starting to see this emergence out of just banking products into a broader array of products that could be much broader in use case. So be it ERPs, accounting systems, wealth management, financial products on the credit and lending side, a host of opportunities definitely starting to expand. And I know some of my partners here thinking about LATAM and how open finance, in their regions as well has continued to expand. And so maybe I can hand it over to Pablo to talk about a few regions on his end.
Perfect. Thanks, Kevin. So everybody now knows that if they need money, they can go with you. Patricia, Latam, how do you see open banking now in Brazil?
So now, thank you, Gabriel, for the invite, and also Finovista for the invite. So I'm Patricia Souza, I'm based in Brazil, and I'm responsible for the participative operation in the open finance process in the bank. So I can start telling you that open finance is already a reality in Brazil. So as we speak, there is more than 6 million consents from customers, consumer clients that were already in the market, and there we have live use cases in Brazil. So in the case of Brazil, the agenda was driven by the central bank. So the Central Bank of Brazil has a number of initiatives to modernize and bring more players to the game. And this started with what we called Bacen hashtag initiative that included instant payments, open finance, CDBT initiatives in country. In the case of open finance, it goes back 2-3 years ago when the discussion started. Back in February last year, we had the first phase of open finance implemented in Brazil, in which the banks started to share information, and these were just public information from the banking sector. This was just the first phase of open finance in Brazil. It went to the second step by end of 2021, in which we started having what we mentioned here on the consumer being the owner of the information and being able to provide the consent to the banks to share their information. This second phase, it's the data sharing phase. It's live in production, and it's called the phase 2 of the process in Brazil. This is where we already see consumers and also corporate clients already sharing information. There are next steps in Brazil. So we are about to start the payment phases of it, with all the payment types being able to run through the open finance rails. And then the phase 4 is where we see the expansion and the word open finance having the meaningful service for clients, because in phase 4 we are expanding in Brazil the rails of open finance to other sectors such as retail, insurance companies, and others. So all this framework in Brazil is being regulatory driven. So the central bank was the one putting the basis for it with a governance that is market related. So the banks, the fintechs, and other players have room to provide their inputs in this ecosystem that it's just about to start. So we are talking about a 2 years project by now, but we do see a lot of progress and a lot of opportunities coming forward as we enter in the payments phases and the other ones.
Thanks, Patricia. Well, we will have a different point of view from somebody that is not inside of a bank. Pablo, what can you tell us about open banking or open financing in Mexico and Colombia?
Yeah, thanks, Gabriel, and a pleasure to be here with you all, and pleasure to be alongside Citi and Finovista in this panel. Maybe as a quick intro. So here at Belvo, we're the open finance platform for Latin America. Essentially, what that means is that we allow fintech innovators to connect their apps to their users' financial data, understand them, from a financial behavior standpoint, and initiate payments on their behalf in the easiest and most secure way through a single platform, right? So today, we operate in Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil, where we work with more than 150 customers, including some of the leading fintechs and financial institutions across a whole bunch of different verticals like credit, neobanks, accounting, ERPs, and so on. And obviously, Mexico and Colombia are relevant markets for us, and kind of complementing what Kevin was mentioning from the perspective of the U.S. being a market-led approach. So when we entered the market in 2020, nothing concrete had happened yet in terms of open finance regulation, and it still really hasn't happened in Mexico and in Colombia. So we can really say that it's been, for the most part, at least in the last 2.5 years, a purely market-driven model. And when we started, Mexico being the first market that we launched, open banking existed to the extent that on the one hand, some international players operated, had some coverage in the country, and two smaller local players also had set up shops. Some were B2C personal finance management apps that had pivoted into providing B2B offerings, but most of them were running like small operations focused on providing services to small companies and fintechs, right? But we came in with a very different and a very unique approach to the market in 4 different ways, right? So one, we were regional from day one. Obviously today we're in 3 markets. We were in these 3 markets pretty much from the very beginning. We were born purely B2B, so we were born with the goal of serving enterprise customers. Also, we made a very big kind of effort and push from day one around tech robustness and security, which is something that is very meaningful and we carry in our product and in our company DNA. And lastly, we built a product focused on the entire ecosystem, right? So a product that not only fintechs could leverage, but that also enterprise customers and financial institutions could use, right? And today, one of the things that we've seen in both of these markets is that there has been an increasing interest in open banking, open finance when it comes to financial institutions, or as we could call them incumbents. Back when we started, majority of the interest came from fintechs or smaller players. But today, the reality is that from our customer base, a growing number of them are financial institutions, right? And then maybe just to provide a couple of examples on how Mexico and Colombia are shaping up in terms of open banking dynamics and regulation. So specifically, one on Mexico, what existed back then when we started was the fintech law in 2018, right? Which had some secondary regulation that provided some hints around the possibility of open banking push or open banking regulation happening or being published in the future. 4 years later, nothing has happened yet, or nothing tangible has happened yet when it comes to real use cases. But we're very bullish because from our conversations with the regulator, things are actually starting to move in the right direction, and there's the will to make this happen. And then in Colombia, unlike Mexico, there was no fintech law, so no real talk of at the regulatory level of fintech, open banking, open finance. So there has been mostly a market-led approach so far. But the first approach that happened vis-a-vis open finance from a regulated angle came with the publication in July of this year of Decree 1297, which makes a specific statement around the regulator wanting to establish an open finance regulatory agenda and regulatory system that not only includes data sharing, but that also includes payment initiation. So this is very akin or very similar to what has happened in Brazil. And actually, the regulator has made statements when it comes to the payment initiation regulation that some of the aspects of PIX, real-time payments and peer-to-peer payments in Brazil could be actually imported and leveraged. So that's kind of in a nutshell, how we've seen the evolution, of open banking from a regulatory perspective since we started 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, of course, the regulation in all countries, also in the US, I think it's the main challenge for everybody. But talking about that, Patricia, we will start with you because Kevin is a little bit ahead in which challenge we're going to face in some years or some months. But let's start with you. Which challenge do you see now to develop and be ready? Because we need to be ready before the regulation, because everybody is going to be ready before that. And which challenge do you see here? And the difference between the challenge for an open banking or open finance individuals and your main core that is companies or in the TTS side. Because for me, it's a little bit different point of view and needs that everybody has.
Yeah, no, excellent. Yeah, so I think that Brazil has a very robust program for open finance that helped us to progress with the process. I think that the challenge at this point, and I think it's a challenge for any new model that we are putting in place right now, is to ensure that we have standardization across the market, and how can we ensure that the standardization that we are putting will enable the functionality to be built. I understand that we also have some challenges in terms of bringing the solutions into the pace. So we are just learning about data sharing, and we are bringing the new solution. So there is still a lot of opportunities for the entire market to learn and how this will work together. How the solutions will work together. On the regulatory space, I think that the Central Bank of Brazil is being very close to the market and bringing the milestones. Actually, the pacing that we are having in Brazil, it's one of the critical pictures of this that is making it happen faster than other places, because the regulation is making sure that the entire community is moving very fast to deliver the solutions. Of course, I think that there is all the adoption process on the market, and when we talk to consumer, you have a good point. So even Pix in Brazil, this was a huge success starting with the consumer universe. It's very simple for the people to understand how to start paying with the instant payments locally, and there is a lot of applications going on. When we move to the corporate world and it comes on the TTS, there is other dynamic in the companies, and it's normally when new introduction or new technology, new solutions comes to the market, it starts with the consumer worlds, we learn a little bit, and then the corporate world, we still need to adapt a little bit the solutions to the corporate universe. I would just give you an example. When we talk about consent, we are talking about one single person talking about their own information. When we are talking about concept in a corporate world, they may mean more than that, because we are talking about corporate information. So there is a range of additional steps for the corporate world when it comes to the open finance, but we also see the benefits that would come when the implementation to the corporate world will come as well. When we think about the use case, there are very simple use cases of data sharing that it's already in the consumer world that we can already see being leveraged to the corporate world as we speak. And when we go to the payment initiation, I think that in a period of time, we need to learn a little bit more on how the corporates are operating through the open finance to do the adjustments in the model and make sure that the adoption is also relevant for them.
Perfect, Patricia. Thanks. Kevin, can you tell us, now that you are a little bit older than us in open finance and open banking, can you tell us which challenge we will face in some moments or some years in our country?
Yeah. So I think the punchline from my side, if I take regulation aside for a minute, particularly in the U.S. market, and we've seen through some of our portfolio companies, is the banks willing to work with other banks, and so while all will agree that the concept of open finance and the opportunity to share on the consumer side information back and forth and partner with external sort of innovators and startups and tech companies that are helping to enable open finance here in the U.S. is just how it actually that is actually structured. I had a board meeting yesterday where one example we were talking about is a bank wants to receive data, another bank wants to send data, but how are they going to start to charge and price that? And so this is a discrete example in this particular model, where the banks are working to ultimately interact directly. But that's, I think, what we've seen the challenge. In the U.S., you talk to other investors, you talk to consumers. Folks are willing to share information. They're getting comfortable with, or already comfortable with, the notion of having access to different credentials or other things that may enable financial institutions or fintechs or other partners to leverage that information. So I think the adoption is happening, and now it's some of the incumbents hopefully getting out of their way and partnering with the right folks to try to get it done, which was candidly a ton of our excitement of investing in Belvo. So as we saw the team, what they were building, the leadership, the opportunity ahead for the region, how could an investment in a stronger partnership with the folks at Belvo help Citi, help Citi Ventures really have a front row seat to hopefully how open finance is going to get adopted across the region, and ultimately how it may impact Citi or where Citi might be able to drive the impact, which we're really excited about, and hope to see unfold here over the coming months. Hopefully, it's not too many years. Hopefully, it's sooner versus later. But definitely excited for what's ahead.
Perfect. Pablo, for us, as Kevin mentioned, our life is easier with Belvaux, no? But also you have some challenge to understand banks and try to work and maintain certain pace of the bank. They are pretty different from a fintech like Belvaux. Can you tell us which type of challenge you are having with us, literally, with Citi?
Yeah, for sure, and maybe I'll cover some broad challenges as well, right? From our point of view as as infrastructure providers, or as a kind of intermediary in the whole kind of data sharing process that Kevin was alluding to, and maybe just to complement a statement that Patricia was making just now, is that open finance is very much a reality, right? And in all the countries and across LATAM. We've already seen millions of consents and millions of connections going through the Belvaux platforms. Very much early days, and there's a lot of potential, as Kevin was mentioning, but it's very much a reality, right? And when it comes to the specific challenges, I mean, from our specific vantage point, the point on regulation is relevant. Not so much because you obviously need to adapt to an external factor that you can't control, and for example in Brazil, as Patricia was mentioning, right? So Bacen has been very clear on the standards, and if you want to be a part of regulated open finance, you have to adhere to those standards. But we view it more from the perspective of a regional play. Coming back to the point on Asset Belvaux being a regional platform from day one, and serving, for that matter, many regional players, right? So we work with companies like Mercado Libre, like Rappi. Obviously, they're looking for just one partner for the entire region, and they want to have a simple experience when, one, building, and two, deploying to their end users, right? And obviously, we have to take care of all the weeds underneath, and we have to take care of the infrastructure underneath, and that is complicated, right? Because in Colombia, we might need to connect one way, in Brazil we might need to connect another way, but ultimately the experience and the layer that connects everything at the regional level needs to be exactly the same, right? So that's tricky, but something that we obviously as an infrastructure player we need to solve for, and that we solve for, and a lot of our time and resources goes into solving for that. The second point I would say is with open finance, we as infrastructure players, as a platform, as a B2B company, we touch and we interact end users, but they're not our customers, right? And I think that's relevant because ultimately we are drivers of this movement. We are drivers of this category, and our customers use our tools to, for example, get consent from their end users to access their financial data, right? We build those tools for them so that it's super easy, to deploy, to integrate, to go live, etc. But we have no touch point with the end user, right? So it's a little bit tricky in the sense that we build tools for our customers to interact with their own end users, but we don't interact with them. So we need to be very creative around ways in which we can, one, get feedback, and two, kind of also build that trust to folks that we indirectly touch, right? So, and as Patricia was mentioning, it's very much a kind of an education process that needs to happen across the board, and that everyone needs to collaborate, right? So us as an infrastructure platform, our customers, the regulator, financial institutions, and so on. So in a way, also coordinating that education process is tricky, because everyone has a different agenda, right? And we need to push for that common agenda in the benefit of end users. Banks might move at a different pace, or Bank A, as Kevin was saying, might have a different agenda to Bank B. Bank A might have a different agenda in a country versus a different agenda in another country, right? So it's a little bit tricky. So we need to bring everyone together. And I think in that case, in that respect, or maybe just to provide a little bit more context, one of the challenges that we have observed in the market, or historically Open Finance sees in the market, is resistance from traditional financial institutions, right? No one wants to be the first to open up, because it's a tricky conversation to have, but everyone sees the opportunity, right? The reality is that in LATAM today, across the countries where we operate, this is not a challenge anymore. This is actually a driver, right? As I was mentioning at the beginning, many of our customers today are some of the largest financial institutions in the region, and they're adopting Open Finance to serve their customers better, right? Obviously, Citi and Citibanamex being one of them. So, we look at that as a very promising sign of things shaping up in the right direction, and some historical challenges actually turning into big drivers of adoption moving forward.
Thanks, Pablo. And I think that with a good use case, the customer experience in Citibanamex, it's something that we can achieve with that. Kevin, some weeks ago, we used Citi here in Citibanamex to make a leapfrog in digital acquisitions. So can you tell us some use cases that you have in the US so we can use that as a leapfrog also here in open banking and open finance?
Yeah. So I think that there's a number of use cases that are out there, and various institutions engaged on. But coming again with that consumer lens, I think there's one or two that certainly have resonated in the U.S., and I'd say even more so, certainly resonating with Citi, that I'd love to highlight. And the first is around banking and wealth management. So broadly speaking, to set a little context, as Jane, our CEO at Citi has announced, Citi's expansion of our wealth business is of massive importance. It's today a great franchise, but there's only room to grow, new clients to bring in and serve, and hopefully continue to expand on our already great offering. But as we do that, really obtaining a comprehensive picture of our existing clients, prospective new clients, and what their profile accounts, the different institutions that they bank with, and really that complete financial picture, it oftentimes can be quite difficult to get to. If the potential client or existing client is provided manually, it could take a fair amount of time, depending on how complicated or the number of different investments that he or she may have. And so as we think about open finance and a number of the partners that Citi works with today, we now have a host of new tools and ways to pull in all that disparate information about a potential client, to really help our advisors come up with a more complete picture, a holistic view of that client, and then ultimately provide not only a better experience if we can bring everything together in one place, but hopefully better recommendations. So what should the client be investing in? How might we want to think about different allocation strategies, again, for him or her, to hopefully maximize their wealth? And so being able to now access a host of new information that already exists, and the client could access on their own, but being able to access it much easier from the advisor side here at Citi, we think can really help us new clients and then maintain and expand with existing clients. The second use case I'd add is more related to our cards business. So as folks may know, Citi, of course, is an issuer of a number of different credit card products across the globe. And depending on what region you may be in, from the cardholder side or from the client side, oftentimes as you get those statements, you look at your mobile banking app, you see the information and the different transactions that have been processed and where you've used your card. You may not recognize the name, the data may not be that relevant. It may relate to a different point of sale terminal that you had actually transacted with, not the merchant of record or where you actually shopped. And again, through open finance and a number of different partners that we're working with, Citi now has ways to incorporate a much broader, a much holistic, a much more contemporary view of that transaction data and that transaction information to not only surface it and hopefully for the cardholder and client, help them better understand, their bill and their statement at the end of the day, but as well for all the internal Citi folks that are working on different models around, fraud and monitoring, different transactions, give them a host of new information to really be able to hopefully, real time and automated, approve or decline transactions based on that enhanced data that they now have access to. And so, in this example, again, definitely a consumer-facing application of access to a host of new transaction data, but as well, from the lending side and from the bank issuer side, certainly a fair amount of excitement in being able to hopefully, reduce fraud and any of the transactions that we wouldn't want to approve from the Citi side.
Thanks, Kev. In a completely different situation, Mexico, it's without a regulation, a clear regulation. Pablo, some use cases that can help the people that we have here to start on, and maybe you can mention the use cases that you have with Citibanamex or with another partner if you want.
Yeah, of course, and I mean, when you look at open finance, globally, I mean, ultimately, the use cases that it can be put to use for are to a certain extent the same across regions, but obviously depending on the composition of the ecosystem, the market dynamics, the weights are very different, right? And I think when you think about what open finance does, right, it's about getting people and companies to better financial outcomes, right? And in LATAM, part of those financial outcomes are about getting people for the first time into the money wheel, right? And a big part of that is actually access to credit, right? So it's a very big one, and no wonder why there's such relevant players, fintech or innovators that have entered the credit space and that have gone on to have a tremendous impact. So obviously credit is a big one, right? It's a very big one we see across our portfolio, and specifically, we see that banking and financial data sources can be very, very helpful in enriching current and underwriting models, right? And actually bringing financial services to people who are currently, quote unquote, credit invisible for institutions, right? So, and here, we have good examples across markets, working with digital banks such as, Rappi, with Neon, etc., where, they use Belvo's platform and the data that they can obtain from their end users through Belvo, to approve previously rejected credit card applicants, right? And because the way they would typically underwrite those applicants would be through, hey, well, I'll just go through the normal process. I'll just check credit bureau data, and you might have a super thin file, or you might have outdated information, or you might have no information at all. And that's just a reason to say, well, look, you're not a valid applicant. And we have seen that through open banking, open finance data, many of our customers through this say credit card issuance use case, they can get an uplift of up to 20% in issuance. What that means is that up to 20% of the pool of rejected applicants can actually now get a credit card, which if you think about it in terms of, when you think about hundreds of thousands of millions of rejected applicants, it is a very large number, right? And that obviously happens without increasing the risk, right? Because with open finance, you can actually get visibility into someone's ability to repay. You can get visibility as to someone's, affordability. You can get visibility as to someone's income level, income recurrence, etc. over time. And when we think about, the work we do with financial institutions, Citi and many others across the region, this is actually one of the primary use cases that we work with them with.
Thanks, Pablo. Patricia, can you help us with some use cases that you are facing now, individuals or CTS?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I think that we mentioned a couple of those that are very much consumer oriented, and inclusion is a big piece of open finance. So totally believe that inclusion will be part of this journey that we are just working on. When we move to the corporate world, then I think that the standardization is something that open finance will bring for the clients with one single click. So the data sharing will enable companies to have one single view of the portfolio with different banks, and with that, have better decisions with their information. And in addition to that, I would point out that in the corporate world, we have a lot of challenges with integration and standardization and how clients reconcile. So the corporate world, there is a lot of opportunities for us with open finance scenario to help our clients to just have visibility of their payments, of the receivables, and do better work with their own money. So there is a lot of excitement to come with all these opportunities. We're already seeing solutions coming to the market. And in some of the cases in the corporate world, visibility was already something that was available through the multi-bank solutions, kind of. And now we are upgrading this with open finance, with more detailed data for our clients. So I see that there's a lot of potentials coming with all those opportunities in the next phases.
Yeah, of course. Like the way to acquire a credit for a corporate or a small company, the way to acquire credit here, it's a lot of information. I'm pretty sure that with Velvo and some use cases, the way to acquire for this type of companies will be faster. We're almost on time. So, Gonzalo, if you can join us, and we will start answering some questions of the public. We can hear you, Gonzalo.
You can hear me? No? Oh, sorry. Well, sorry. Well, thanks everyone for this interesting talk. That's the second time that this happens to me. Sorry. Well, I saw that you joined the discussion with this question to Patricia, and she talked about the standardization of the APIs. And I saw this specific question about the Brazilian market. It's for Pablo, but they are questioning why. What has been the most important challenge about the Brazilian market? Typically, the persons that we are working in the fintech industry, we consider sometimes that the Brazilian market is a bit not closed, but it's a bit difficult. So I think that person is asking us if you are developing APIs for the Brazilian market, maybe you can't take these APIs to other foreign countries. That's something that they noticed. But specifically, they want to know what's the biggest challenge for Belvo in this market.
Yeah, thanks, Gonzalo, for the question. Yeah, I mean, the reality is, and coming back to the point that I was mentioning earlier around one of the challenges being, from an infrastructure perspective, needing to connect to the quote unquote rails of each country. That supposes a big challenge in and of itself, right? But specifically about Brazil, so one of the things that we did, was we were Brazilian from day one, right? So we're a Latin American company. We have headquarters in Sao Paulo and in Mexico City. I'm not Brazilian, but I spent a lot of time in Sao Paulo. But we made a deliberate decision to start from zero in Brazil at the same time as we started from zero in Colombia, at the same time as we started from zero in Mexico, right? So that gave us a tremendous advantage when it came to, one, understanding the local dynamics, and two, positioning ourselves as, quote unquote, a Brazilian company, because, we are a Brazilian company as much as we are a Mexican company, as much as we are a Colombian company, right? So obviously it requires a lot of work. Like we have a number of people, in our team that only look at the Brazilian market, going extremely deep into the needs of the market, the regulation in the market, what we need to do to build in the market, and you can only do that if you're local, and if you're local from day one.
Great. Thank you, Pablo. I have the second question is for all of you guys. The audience is asking us, what's your take on customers' adoption and trust of open banking? And if is LATAM customer ready to share credentials and transactional data? How do you see this part?
I'd say from the U.S. side, I think the trust is there. Not sure if that'll be a precursor to the LATAM markets, but we'll let some of my fellow panelists maybe provide their thoughts.
Yeah, and I can briefly comment on that, and you know, from the data that we see at Belvo, you know, obviously having processed, as I was saying, millions of consents through our platform, both for you know, end users, or you know, people and businesses. You know, one of the core metrics that we look at when validating this trust component, like a proxy for that, is, you know, in the flow to provide your consent, there is you know, a step on, you know, the Belvo embedded experience that our customers deploy in their apps, what we call the Belvo widget. And that critical step is, once you pick an institution to connect to, you have the credentials that you need to enter to connect, and you have a button that says go, or a button that says connect. And we measure, you know, the kind of the percentage of folks that actually land on that screen, and the percentage of folks that actually go on to the next screen. So they're actually people that enter their credentials and hit go. And surprisingly enough, with, you know, millions of consents, you know, we see that, you know, it depends, obviously, country by country, depends, you know, use case by use case, depends on the type of customer, but roughly between 60 and 70% of people actually opt in to share their credentials, to enter their credentials, and to accept. So it's a very high percentage, and it's something that we've seen, you know, at scale.
Perfect. Thank you, Pablo. I don't know if well, if no someone has another answer, please go ahead. Otherwise, I have this question is more for the Mexican market. Maybe Gabriel, you can participate a lot in here. The audience is asking us about the remittances, right? They are very important for the Mexican economy and also for Latin overall. And they want to know, what open banking trends do you see in this industry?
Yeah, of course, the last years and more in COVID, we saw an incremental amount of all these remittances from all countries to our central part of the country, and it's the main part. And of course, in this side, we need a regulation now. We are working in those type of use cases, Citibanamex and another banks. But this topic will need obviously the launch of the regulation. But it's some of the ones that we have. Also in Citibanamex, we have now an open API in our website for ATMs, and it's a basic use case that we can talk about, people from Rappi, for example, and that they have a service that to deliver some money, the way that they can see where our ATMs are located, and they visit our ATMs and they can give a better service for their customers.
Perfect. Thank you, Gabriel. So, well, I think this can be our last questions for you guys. It's a pretty controversial question, which says, who wins the most in open banking, emerging fintechs or the banks? Who do you think can take the best from open banking at this moment in Latin America?
I can start. I think it's the customer at the end, because this is all about collaboration. And I think that we already learned from the past years that collaboration between banks and fintechs will give us better service to our clients. So I don't think that it's a game that someone wins and the other loses. It's much more about making our client life easier. And I think that we are together. It's example here as in Belvo to make it happen. So this would be my view.
Pretty optimistic answer. Thank you, Patricia. Guys, do you have any other additional comment on this? I think it's very important to know your thoughts.
No, but for us, of course, we agree completely with Patricia. No? At the end, what this will make is that the customer will have easier way to make their finance life easier. No? And as easy you can open Amazon and buy something, and there is no discussion with company you are buying shoes or whatever, and you are acquiring the product. It's the same thing. We need to achieve that you should have a solution in a finance view as you can buy something in Amazon or Mercado Libre, as easy as that, and you are not understanding which supplier or what is going on. It's completely clear about that.
Agree with everything that's said. Don't have too much to dissent on.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a pretty optimistic future also for open banking and the Latin Americans. So, guys, if you don't have any other comments from our side, we are finishing with this session of FINNOSUMMIT Webinar. Thanks a lot for being here with us and share all your knowledge and perspectives with our audience. It's very important to have the persons that are working on this future, and you're every day working on it. So thanks a lot for being here with us, Patricia, Pablo, Kevin, and Gabriel. It's been a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Pleasure is ours.
Guys.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye you.
So I'm jumping again into Spanish. Vamos a hacer el cierre del evento. Pues muchísimas gracias a todos quienes nos acompañaron en esta edición de FINNOSUMMIT Webinar presentado por Citibanamex. Yo soy Salo Sánchez. Estaré un rato en el networking a través de la plataforma de Remo por si quieren conectar con nosotros también. Y pues bueno, gracias nuevamente a todos quienes nos acompañaron, a nuestros speakers. Recuerden que pueden continuar la conversación en Remo. Ahorita se van a activar las conversaciones a través de videollamada. Y también los recuerdo que sigan nuestras redes sociales, @finovista, para que estén enterados de las siguientes actividades que estaremos desarrollando. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos y nos vemos pronto.